I still brought it to the credit union anyway, and when the manager saw what was inside, her hands started shaking. She looked at me with wide eyes and said we needed to call the police right away. That's when I knew my son had made a terrible mistake. My name is Thomas Whitmore, and I'm 63 years old. I live in Vancouver, British Columbia, where I spent 37 years teaching high school math before I retired last year. My wife Margaret died 4 months ago from health problems caused by diabetes. We'd been married for 40 years, and losing her felt like losing half of myself. Margaret was a school librarian. We met when I was a young teacher just out of college, and she was organizing the card catalog system. She had this way of making everyone feel important, whether it was a student having trouble finding a book or a teacher having a bad day. We never had much money. 2 teacher salaries in one of Canada's most expensive cities didn't go far, but we had each other, and that was enough. We had 2 children. Our son Jeffrey is 34, works as a portfolio manager at a downtown investment company, and lives in a penthouse in Yaletown. Our daughter Rachel is 31, works as a community outreach coordinator for a homeless shelter, and lives in a small apartment in East Vancouver. They couldn't be more different. Margaret's funeral was on a cold October morning. The service was simple, held at the small United Church we'd attended for many years. Rachel helped me with all the arrangements, while Jeffrey showed up 15 minutes late, took several phone calls during the service, and left immediately after to catch a flight to Toronto for an important meeting. After everyone had left the reception at our home, Rachel found me in the garage. I was sitting on an old workbench holding a small metal lockbox that Margaret's best friend Helen had pressed into my hands earlier. "Dad," Rachel said softly, sitting beside me. "What's that?" "Helen said your mother gave it to her 2 weeks before she died. Asked her to make sure I got it after the funeral." "Are you going to open it?" I nodded and turned the small key that was taped to the top. Inside was a single item, a small brass key with a number stamped on it. Attached to it was a note in Margaret's handwriting. "Thomas, this is for the safety deposit box at the credit union on Commercial Drive, box 247. I never told you about it because I didn't want you to worry. I wanted to make sure you and the kids would be okay. Love you forever, M." Rachel's eyes filled with tears. Mom had a safety deposit box? Before I could answer, Jeffrey's voice came from the doorway. "What's going on?" I showed him the note and the key. He barely glanced at it before laughing in a mean way. "A safety deposit box? Mom. Come on, Dad. She probably kept some fake jewelry in there, or maybe old report cards. You know how sentimental she was about junk like that." "It's not junk," Rachel said quietly. "If Mom left it for Dad, it's important." Jeffrey laughed that sharp, rude laugh. "I think I'll check it anyway," I said. Jeffrey sighed with annoyance. "Suit yourself, but don't get your hopes up. Mom never had any money. That's just reality." He grabbed his expensive leather coat. "I'll call you next week." After he left, Rachel squeezed my hand. "Do you want me to come with you to the credit union?" "No, sweetheart. I think I need to do this alone. Your mother and we had our own way of doing things." The next morning, I drove to the credit union on Commercial Drive. It was a small branch where Margaret and I had banked for over 30 years. The manager, Carmen Rodriguez, had known us for many years. She greeted me with a sad smile. "Thomas, I'm so sorry about Margaret. She was such a lovely woman." "Thank you, Carmen. I actually need to access a safety deposit box, box 247. Something flickered across her face. Surprise. Maybe concern. "Of course. Let me get the signature cards." She disappeared into the back office and returned a few minutes later with a folder. "Yes, Margaret opened this box in 1987. You're listed as the alternate accessor." She led me to the vault and we went through the security procedures. The box was larger than I expected, about the size of a briefcase. Carmen left me alone in the small, private room to open it. My hands trembled as I lifted the lid. Inside were several documents neatly organized and labeled folders. The first folder was marked Investments. I opened it and felt my breath catch. Inside were dozens of stop certificates, all in Margaret's name. I recognized some of the companies: Royal Bank, Canadian National Railway, Bell Canada, Enbridge. There were purchase confirmations dating back to 1984 showing small monthly purchases of shares. $50 here, $100 there. I pulled out my reading glasses and started going through everything. There was a handwritten ledger in Margaret's neat handwriting, documenting every purchase. I could see the pattern. She'd been taking small amounts from each of our paychecks, money I'd never missed, and investing it consistently over 40 years. At the bottom of the box was a sealed envelope marked for Thomas. My hands shook as I opened it. "My dearest Thomas," it began. "If you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm so sorry I never told you about this, but I had my reasons. Remember when we were young and we used to talk about traveling after retirement, about seeing the northern lights together, about not having to worry? I wanted to make that possible. Every month I took a small amount of money you never missed and I invested it. Nothing fancy, just solid Canadian companies that paid dividends. I reinvested everything. The people at the brokerage helped me over the years. This isn't about the money, my love. It's about giving you freedom. Freedom to live the life you deserve. Freedom to help Rachel with her student loans. Freedom to finally stop worrying. I love you more than words can say. Margaret." I sat there, tears streaming down my face, for I don't know how long. Then I gathered everything and asked Carmen if I could make copies. She set me up at a small desk with a photocopier. As I was copying the documents, I noticed something odd. Several of the statements showed attempted transactions from the past 3 months, all declined. Someone had tried to access Margaret's account 5 different times. The last attempt was just 2 weeks ago, 3 days before Margaret passed away. "Carmen!" I called out. She came over immediately. "What are these declined transactions?" Her expression grew serious. "Thomas, I need to show you something." She led me into her office and pulled up records on her computer. "These are attempted wire transfers. Someone tried to move funds from Margaret's investment account into an offshore account. 5 different attempts. Each time our fraud detection system flagged it because the account information didn't match our records. Who tried to do this? The requests all came through digitally, but they included documentation claiming to be from you. Power of attorney papers saying you were authorizing the transfer due to Margaret's declining health. I felt cold. I never signed any power of attorney. I know, that's why we blocked them. The signatures didn't match what we had on file. Thomas, someone forged these documents. We were about to contact the police, but then Margaret passed away and we wanted to give you time to grieve first. Do you know who submitted them?" Carmen pulled up another screen. "The requests came from an email address registered to..." She paused, her face troubled. "To Jeffrey Whitmore." I sat down heavily. My son, my own son, had tried to steal from his dying mother. "There's more," Carmen said gently. "We contacted the brokerage where Margaret's actual stocks are held. They reported similar attempts. Someone tried to transfer the shares into a different account. Those attempts were also blocked. Thomas, the current value of Margaret's portfolio is approximately $2.7 million. The room spun. $2.7 million! My wife, who'd clipped coupons and bought discount clothes, had quietly built a fortune through patience and consistency. "I need to make a call," I said. I drove home in a daze and immediately phoned Rachel. "Can you come over? I need to talk to you about something." She arrived within the hour, concerned by the tone of my voice. I showed her everything: the documents, the ledger, Margaret's letter, the attempted fraud. Rachel's hands covered her mouth. "Dad, this is incredible. Mom did this for 40 years. And Rachel, Jeffrey tried to steal it 5 times. Her face went white. "No, Jeffrey wouldn't." "The evidence is clear. He forged power of attorney documents. He tried to wire the money offshore." I pulled out my phone. "I'm calling the police." "Dad, wait. Maybe there's an explanation. Maybe someone stole his identity." "Rachel, I need you to tell me something, and I need you to be honest. Has Jeffrey ever asked you for money?" She looked away. "Dad, please." Last year, she said quietly. He asked me to co-sign a loan, said he had a sure-thing investment opportunity. I did it because he's my brother. The investment went bad. He defaulted. I'm still paying off that loan. $23,000. I felt rage building in my chest. Why didn't you tell me? Because you and Mom had already done so much for me. You helped me through college. I didn't want to burden you with my problems. I called the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. They took my statement and the evidence. 2 officers came to the house that evening to interview both Rachel and me. Mr. Whitmore, the senior officer, said, "This is clearly fraud and forgery. We'll need to investigate further. In the meantime, I'd advise you not to contact your son directly." But Jeffrey called me first, 2 days later. "Dad, I heard from some people at your credit union. Why are you poking around in Mom's old accounts? You should just let it go." "Let what go, Jeffrey?" "Whatever sentimental stuff Mom left, it's not worth the hassle." "The credit union called you?" A pause. "No, I assumed." "Jeffrey, did you try to steal your mother's money while she was dying?" Silence. Then, "Dad, you don't understand. I was trying to help. I'm a professional investor. I could have grown that money." "You forged documents. You tried to wire money to an offshore account. That's not helping. That's theft." "I'm your son. That money should have been mine anyway. Do you know how humiliating it's been, having parents who drove a 15-year-old Toyota and bought clothes at thrift stores? Do you know what my colleagues said when they found out my dad was just a high school teacher?" "Your mother died 3 months ago, Jeffrey. Were you trying to steal from her before she passed?" Another pause. "She was going to die anyway. The doctor said so. I needed the money. I have obligations." "What obligations?" "My girlfriend Christina. She's a lifestyle influencer. We have appearances to maintain. And I made some investments that didn't pan out. I needed to cover the losses before my firm found out." I felt sick. "You tried to steal from your dying mother to cover your bad investments and fund your girlfriend's Instagram account? You make it sound so ugly. I was going to pay it back." "The police don't see it that way." "The police? Dad, you called the police on your own son!" "You committed fraud multiple times. And Rachel told me about the loan she co-signed, the one you defaulted on. Rachel's an adult. She made her choice." "Look, Dad, we can work this out. Just drop the charges. I'll pay Rachel back." "No, you won't manipulate your way out of this." Jeffrey's voice turned cold. "Fine, but don't expect me to take care of you when you're old and sick. You're choosing money over your son." "No, Jeffrey, I'm choosing honesty over theft. There's a difference." He hung up. I sat there feeling like I'd aged a decade in that conversation. The investigation moved quickly. The RCMP discovered that Jeffrey had also defrauded one of our neighbors, Mrs. Chen, an 82-year-old widow. He'd convinced her to invest her retirement savings in one of his guaranteed funds, then lost most of it through reckless trading. She'd been too embarrassed to tell anyone. They also found Jeffrey's girlfriend, Christina, running a coaching program called Legacy Access, teaching people how to access their inheritance early through various legal loopholes. The program cost $5,000 and was completely fraudulent. In December, 5 months after Margaret's death, Jeffrey was arrested at his office. He was charged with 5 counts of fraud, 3 counts of forgery, 1 count of elder abuse for the Mrs. Chen situation, and conspiracy charges related to Christina's coaching scam. But there was something else. During the investigation, the police requested Margaret's medical records. That's when they discovered something that made my blood run cold. Margaret had been prescribed a specific heart medication after her diabetes diagnosis. But in the months before her death, someone had switched her to a cheaper generic version without consulting her doctor. The generic version didn't work as well for her particular condition. Her doctor confirmed that this switch had contributed significantly to her declining health and eventual heart failure. I found the evidence in Jeffrey's email records, which were seized during the investigation. He'd been on our health insurance plan until recently and had access to her prescription information. He'd changed her medication online to the cheaper version, pocketing the difference, about $200 per month, claiming he was helping optimize our family's healthcare spending. That was when the manslaughter charge was added. The trial took place the following spring. I sat in the courtroom every single day, Rachel beside me. Jeffrey's expensive lawyers tried every tactic they could think of, but the evidence was overwhelming. The prosecutor laid it out clearly. Jeffrey Whitmore attempted to steal $2.7 million from his mother while she was dying. When that failed, he stole from his sister and from an elderly neighbor. And his actions in switching his mother's medication without medical authorization directly contributed to her death. This wasn't just about greed. This was about a complete disregard for human life, including his own mother's. Jeffrey's lawyer tried to paint him as a victim of pressure and stress, a good son who'd made mistakes. But when they put Mrs. Chen on the stand, this tiny, brave woman who described how Jeffrey had convinced her to trust him, how he'd lost her life savings, I saw several jurors wipe their eyes. Rachel testified about the loan, her voice steady despite her tears. "I loved my brother. I wanted to believe in him, but he knew I was struggling financially, and he took advantage of that. He never had any intention of paying me back." When it was my turn, I told them about Margaret. My wife spent 40 years building something, not for herself, but for her family. She lived modestly so we could have security, and our son tried to steal it while she was dying. Then his actions hastened her death. I don't recognize the person he's become. The jury deliberated for 4 hours, guilty on all counts. At sentencing, the judge was stern. "Mr. Whitmore, you are a highly educated man who worked in a position of trust in the financial industry. You used that knowledge and those skills to prey on vulnerable people, including your own family members. Your actions resulted in your mother's death." Jeffrey received 22 years, 5 years for each of the major fraud counts, with several running consecutively, an additional 7 years for the manslaughter charge. He'd be 76 when released. Christina received 15 years for her role in the conspiracy and for defrauding multiple elderly victims through her coaching program. The restitution hearing happened 2 weeks later. Jeffrey was ordered to pay back every penny he'd stolen or attempted to steal. The money seized from his accounts, about $350,000, was distributed to his victims. Mrs. Chen received full restitution for her losses, plus interest. Rachel received payment for her loan, plus damages for emotional distress. After the trial ended, I asked Rachel to come with me to the credit union. Carmen met us in the conference room with a financial advisor named Martin Chen, no relation to our neighbor, though they'd connected during the trial, and he'd offered to help pro bono after hearing her story. "Mr. Whitmore," Martin said, "your wife was an extraordinarily disciplined investor. She never chased trends. She never sold in a panic. She just kept buying solid companies month after month for 40 years. The miracle of compound growth did the rest." He showed us the portfolio breakdown. Margaret had turned roughly $96,000 in contributions into $2.7 million through patient, consistent investing and dividend reinvestment. "What do I do with it?" I asked. "That depends on what you want your legacy to be," Martin said. I looked at Rachel. "Your mother had a dream. She wanted to help people, and she wanted to make sure you were taken care of." I turned back to Martin. "Here's what I'd like to do. First, I set up a trust fund for Rachel worth $300,000. It would cover the remainder of her student loans and give her a financial cushion." She cried when I told her. Second, I used $200,000 to fully restore Mrs. Chen's retirement savings and set up a monthly annuity so she'd never have to worry again. When I told her, she took my hands in hers and said, "Your Margaret would be proud." Third, I established the Margaret Whitmore Financial Literacy Scholarship at the community college. It would provide full tuition for first-generation college students studying finance or education, with a focus on teaching practical money management skills. The endowment was $1 million, generating enough income to support 10 students per year forever. Fourth, I donated $100,000 to Rachel's homeless shelter, funding a financial counseling program to help their clients build stability. With the remaining money, I did something Margaret and I had always dreamed about, but never dared to do. I planned a trip to see the Northern Lights. But I didn't go alone. I took Rachel, and I asked Mrs. Chen if she'd like to join us. She'd never been on a plane before. We traveled to Yellowknife in January, staying in a small lodge. On our third night, the aurora danced across the sky in ribbons of green and purple. Rachel held my hand on one side, Mrs. Chen on the other. "Dad," Rachel whispered, "I think Mom is here with us." "I know she is, sweetheart." Mrs. Chen looked up at the lights, tears on her cheeks. "My husband always wanted to see this. He died before we could afford it. Thank you for letting me come." "Margaret would have insisted," I said. When we returned to Vancouver, I made one more change. I started volunteering at the community college twice a week, teaching a free course called Building Wealth Slowly, Lessons from an Ordinary Life. I used Margaret's story, with her permission through that letter she'd left me, to show students that wealth isn't about getting rich quick. It's about patience, discipline, and starting small. My first class had 15 students. By the third semester, there was a waiting list. Many of them were people who'd never thought investing was for them. Single parents, minimum wage workers, new immigrants. I showed them Margaret's original ledger, the one where she recorded $50 stock purchases. "This is how it starts," I'd tell them. Not with a windfall, not with a hot tip, but with consistency and time. My wife was a librarian. I was a math teacher. We weren't special. We just started early and never stopped. One student, a young single mother named Priya, came to me after class. "Mr. Whitmore, I can only save $40 a month. Is it even worth starting?" I smiled. $40 a month for 30 years with average market returns could become over $70,000. "Yes, Priya, it's worth starting." She started crying. "No one ever told me I could do this. Everyone always said investing was for rich people." "That's what they want you to think," I said. My wife proved them wrong. I still live in the same house Margaret and I shared. I drive the same 15-year-old Toyota. I shop at the same stores, not because I have to, but because those habits honor her memory. She taught me that wealth isn't about what you spend, it's about having choices. Rachel comes for dinner every Sunday. We cook Margaret's recipes and talk about our week. She's thriving in her work, no longer stressed about money. She started investing $50 a month herself, following her mother's example. I think about Jeffrey sometimes. I've written him letters. He hasn't responded. I've told him I forgive him, even if I can't forget what he did. I hope someday he'll understand that his mother's real gift wasn't the money. It was the lesson in patience, in delayed gratification, in building something meaningful over time. But that's a lesson you can't force on someone. They have to choose to learn it. 6 months ago, on what would have been Margaret's 62nd birthday, I visited her grave. It's in Mountain View Cemetery, overlooking the city. I brought her favorite flowers, purple irises, and sat beside her headstone. "We did it, my love," I told her. "Your money is helping people. Rachel's doing well, and I finally saw the Northern Lights, just like we planned. I wish you could have been there, but I know you were watching." The wind rustled through the trees, and I swear I felt her presence. Margaret was always there in the quiet moments, in the lessons she'd taught through her actions, in the legacy she'd built, not for wealth, but for love. As I drove home that day, I thought about what I'd learned from all of this, about how the people who judge you for not being wealthy enough are often the ones who will try to take from you, about how true character shows up not in what we have, but in what we do with it, about how patience and consistency can build something far greater than any get-rich-quick scheme. And I thought about how my wife, who never made more than $55,000 a year, who clipped coupons and wore thrift store clothes, managed to build a fortune and a legacy that will outlive us all. That evening, I sent an email to Martin Chen at the credit union. "I'd like to expand the scholarship fund," I wrote. "Let's make it 20 students per year instead of 10. Margaret would want that. Because in the end, that's what wealth is really for. Not to hoard, not to show off, but to give people choices they wouldn't otherwise have. To open doors that seemed permanently closed." My wife understood that. She lived it every day for 40 years, one $50 investment at a time. And now, thanks to her patience and vision, her legacy will keep opening those doors for generations to come. That's the real inheritance she left us, not the money itself, but the wisdom to use it well.